Today, we are smoking ribs. For starters, you're going to put mustard. I used honey mustard on the ribs and just rub it in. That's going to bind the seasoning. It's not going to really influence the taste, but it binds the seasoning on the ribs. I use honey mustard because we like honey mustard more than regular mustard. But you put that in. It also will help with the tenderness of the ribs, but that will bind your seasoning. You also want to make sure when you start to take a butter knife back here and get this membrane from back here off. That'll keep it from getting this tough when you smoke it. But once that's done, you put your seasoning of choice on. I'm not going to video that because it's really hard to do that and hold the camera. But you rub in your dry seasoning and you put it on the smoker. The smoker is going. Target temp again is going to be around that 175 to 125. 200 probably the highest you want it to get. To start off, you would put the ribs on the grate directly for 3 hours before you go to the next step. You're just going to smoke it low and slow. The ribs have been on the grill for 3 hours. We are at the next step where we would do the 2-hour braise. That's the back side. It's going to go in the tin foil with the wet rub. There's the other rack of ribs that's got to also get done. But with the braise, you would use butter, apple cider vinegar, and brown sugar. You use 2 to 3 tablespoons worth of butter cut up into little pieces and just kind of lay it out across the ribs. You would put the ribs meat side down this time, where when it was on the grill it's bone side down. Of course the butter's kind of sticking together. Then we use 1/4 cup of the brown sugar, and you would put that over the top of the ribs, and then a cup's worth of apple cider vinegar. I'm going to revisit once I get that stuff done. Okay. I have everything prepared this step so I can actually show. So, like I said, you would put that 2 to 3 tablespoons worth of butter across it. Just cut it up into smaller pieces so you can spread it across the ribs. Then you have that 1/4 cup worth of brown sugar, which you're going to sprinkle over the back end. And then you would have 1 cup worth of apple cider vinegar. You can also use apple juice if you want. This is just the wet rub that you would put over it to braise it for 2 hours. That's only 1/2 cup, so I actually have to do another 1/2 cup. Some of that went down where it wasn't supposed to. But then once that's all done, you would wrap it. I gotta clean up the mess now. So you would just wrap the ribs so it can go back on the grill. When you go to braise your ribs, you want the temperature increased a little bit. Before you're keeping it closer to that 175 to 200 degrees. Now we want it up about 225 for the next 2 hours. You're going to put the ribs, instead of bone side down, meat side down, wrapped up in the wet juices that it's now in for 2 hours. So I've just put more wood on. I've just relit it to get it going again. And we're going to add the meat. Now once it's all on there, we just close it on up. And we're trying to get this up to 225. The final step, which is the barbecue step. Normally you would put these ribs straight back on the rack, bone side down, but these things are so tender. I went to move this rack, and as you can see, it's just kind of coming off the bone. Like, it's barely holding on. There's just no way I could just move it over because it would all come off the bone. So instead, we're going to put them into here and barbecue them up. These are pretty hot. See how this rack isn't quite as tender as the other rack. It's a little bit thicker of a rack though. So I have slathered the barbecue on the ribs. I'm going to cover them, even though normally at this step you would not have them covered. They'd be right on the rack like I said. But the bigger of the two racks definitely could use a little more cook time, and covering it up will help contain that heat a little better. This other rack is pretty well done. It's looking awesome. They are done. Yummy. Perfection.